This job is risky, and while we go through painstaking efforts to minimize those risks, if we head toward Mars, you take risk. I need you to practice good knife handling, okay? But that space is better left with just it's uncertain, and who knows? So why stress? Good job, team. Good job. Good job, family. When you have reached a point in your professional and personal journey where you don't really want to give up that current situation, that's probably about when NASA's looking for you. I joined the Navy while I was in college. I graduated, I went to officer candidate school, learned to fly. I flew the F-18, my first squadron. I took part of Operation Iraqi Freedom and flew a couple dozen missions in combat there. That's what I was focused on, is being a CO of a fighter squadron. The Navy had invested quite a lot of time in me, and my career in the Navy was very special to me, is very special to me, and so I absolutely was not looking forward to walking away from that. It was a bittersweet moment to be able to come here. Hey, Mr. Dixon.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how you doing?
All right, doing all right.
But it was an opportunity that you just can't refuse.
Good morning. Thank you, Matt, and good morning to everyone. I hope you are pumped up because today is a real life-changing event. It may not make sense to you at this point, but it'll make sense to you later. You know, I remember when I was growing up in the projects of Los Angeles, and I never saw a person who looked like me in the educational system until I was in the 8th grade. I never met an engineer until I got to Cornell University later. There were lots of people that tried to pull me along. And it's only now, many years later, that I realized that had it not been for so many folks who reached out, I would never be here. But I thought about it this morning and I said, you know, why would I want to get up? What got me up early in the morning on a Saturday? And one of the things that strikes me about being here this morning, you don't have to clean up your room. Like I don't have to go out and clean the deck and do all the other things. So that's one good reason to be here today, to sit around and listen to some great people, to talk to the guy who went into space and can tell you all of those Star Trek stories, to talk about a fighter pilot, the guy who actually landed planes on aircraft carrier. You know, you may have seen Top Gun. Well, here's the real Top Guns around. To talk about ladies, generals who made unbelievable changes in the military, people who build the cars your mom and your dad and your uncles and aunts, all of these folks drive. These are the people who also took out their day. They're taking out their time right now for you. Because I tell you, we've got a problem. Our problem not only is this pandemic, our problem is that a lot of young people like you are not getting the opportunities and the information you need, particularly during this pandemic. And we're concerned. One day you will be in this position. I didn't think I would be, but now I realize if I can do it, you might have heard it before, but you can do it. And I know what my background was like. So today is about one day you will be here. We need you to be here, but today we're here to help pull you along. I really, really hope that other than that motivational factor that you don't have to clean up the house this morning because you're sitting here doing something that mom and dad, uncle, grandma, auntie, all of them are saying, yay, this is important. Other than not having to do that, you actually are going to learn something. And here's some house cleaning rules. At the end, there's a little survey we're going to take. And we do it at the end to make sure you stick through. And if you fill out that survey, you're going to get something. You're going to get something for sure. But if you're one of the lucky few, you're going to get a lunch. By the end of the day, in your email is going to come a little certificate that you're going to be able to go out, put your mask on, go out to one of these nice restaurants and you're going to be able to get a lunch on us. So with that said, listen, enjoy this morning. It's going to be unbelievable. It's going to be life-changing. And at some point, you're going to wake up and you're going to talk about this to other people. So with that, back over to you, Matt, and thank you to our leadership, Vice Admiral Davis, Vice Admiral Brewer, General Johnny Watson, Von Richardson, and so many others who have given so much time to make this and other events happen.
Thank you, Dr. Taborn. Great opening. We now turning to a fighter pilot extraordinaire, Vice Admiral Walter Davis, U.S. Navy retired.
Well, I've been waiting a long time to do this. And the two people I really have to thank before we even start is Matt Bowman and Quan Hurst, who are really the two that put this together and drew all of us together. But I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and we didn't have career ed during those days. But Professor West, who was our math professor, would have us go around the room and say, "What are you going to do when you grow up?" So I've always been looking at airplanes on my wall at home. So I said, I want to be a pilot. Well, after the session, he pulled me aside. He said, I think you need to think this through, and you're good at math, you be an engineer. Well, I took his advice, but also I kept that other dream in mind, and sure enough, after I got my engineering degree, in those days we had to be an ROTC, and anyway, so I joined Navy ROTC and came into the Navy and enjoyed flying airplanes so much during my operational tours that I did that for 37 years. And then doing all my shore duty, I did engineering. So that's my short story. You're going to hear some really exciting stories here today. And Admiral Dave Brewer is going to lead this. And you will find a neat career here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Davis. Vice Admiral Brewer, sir, over to you.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, students. I am Vice Admiral David Brewer. I live in Orlando, Florida, and what you see behind me is my alma mater, Prairie View A&M University, one of the best engineering schools in the nation. And the reason I say that is because one of the things that Prairie View is noted for is that it has the highest starting salaries of any of the HBCUs and ranks in the top 10% in the nation because they graduate so many phenomenal engineers. In fact, we just had a phenomenal accomplishment by an admiral who graduated the year behind me, O.C. Combs, who just came up with a shelter for COVID, for the pandemic, that's going to make it much easier for people to go in and get tested and assessed. And they're going to be deployed pretty soon. So why do I mention that? Because that's what happens when you go into a STEM career. That's what happens. I started out here in Orlando. I had phenomenal teachers when I was growing up. I was always on track to go to college, but I didn't really know whether or not I wanted to go into science, technology, engineering, or math. So I chose science. I was a biology and chemistry major. I went to Howard University initially, and then I transferred to Prairie View, and as the Lord would have it, I met a lieutenant or lieutenant commander by the name of Walt Davis, who flew his airplane in for us to see. And we were overly impressed with that. But anyway, the bottom line is this. I started out in 1970 as an ensign in the United States Navy. It was tough times then. 256 African-American officers out of 70,000. And so there were no admirals and 5 black captains at the time. Captain being same thing as colonel. So there were 13 of us. 3 went Marine Corps, 10 Navy. Of the 10 Navy, 8 stayed on active duty for 20 years or more. Of the 8, 6 rose to the rank of captain or higher. I was the 1 admiral. That is a record promotion for a group of kids that they told, you're not going to make it. Why do I say that to you now? Because some people are going to tell you that today. They're going to say, you can't make it. You don't have the chops, or they won't say it to you directly, but they'll put you down anyway. Don't let that happen to you. We did not let that happen to us. We set a promotion record because we had what we call the intestinal fortitude and the belief in ourselves and understanding that I went to a university that prepared me for anything I wanted to do in life. So I commanded 2 ships, and here's your first test. My first ship was an LST that I used to take to Korea, to BEYA and to support Dr. Taborn in Baltimore in the harbor. That ship was 2 football fields long. How many feet is that? My second ship was a command and control ship, USS Mount Whitney. That ship was 3 football fields long with 900 crew members. How many feet is that? Okay, so in essence, you're always going to be doing math on a daily basis, whether you're counting the change that you're supposed to get from a merchant to some problem that you have to deal with. The math is always going to be a part of your life, so be prepared for that. But the bottom line is this. If I could make it, if Admiral Davis could make it, coming from that era where we were really denigrated, especially as African Americans, they said we were not going to make it. And Admiral Davis was one of my heroes. If we can make it, the stars are yours. And you're going to meet some stars today in my good friend, Charlie Bolden, who is an astronaut, NASA, a phenomenal human being, and a great motivational speaker. So shoot for the stars. I want you to shoot for the stars because you come from good stock. Don't let anybody tell you that you don't come from good stock. Don't let anybody tell you that your skin color or your background is going to hold you back, because some of the most successful students in Prairie View and some of the most successful students in high school came from humble beginnings. I'm going to end with one of them right now. One of the top 5 physicists in the world graduated from my high school, Dr. Sylvester James Gates. He won the Presidential Medal of Science. Look him up. Came from humble beginnings right here in Orlando, Florida. Nobody thought he was going to make it, but he made it. And the same thing is going to happen with you. So listen up and have a good time today.
Wonderful, Vice Admiral Brewer. All right, we have an engineer, award-winning teacher, award-winning math teacher, Miss Patrice Gibbs.
Remember to unmute. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to Matt and Juan. Thank you so much for inviting me to this event today. Can you hear me okay? Thank you for the thumbs up. A little nervous being in a virtual digital room, as Dr. Taborn instructed us, with so many great and wonderful and accomplished people. I feel honored to be in your presence today. But I just want to talk to you a little bit today about how to merge engineering and math, or for the students who are in math classes now, everything from basic math and arithmetic to algebra, calculus, wherever you are in your path. We always get the question as teachers, when will I ever need this stuff? And the first thought that comes to mind is, I don't know. But guess what? You're going to use it somewhere at some point in time, as Mr. Brewer just finished letting us know. It's going to come. And when you least expect it, expect it. I would just like to share with you a little bit about Math 2.0. I didn't know until recently that Math 2.0 actually even has its own day. July 8th is Math 2.0 Day. And it's basically just a celebration of the merge and combination of math and technology. My background, which seems to pale in comparison to the predecessors who have spoken before me, but my background is actually in engineering. I graduated from the Florida A&M University at the highest of 7 hills in Tallahassee, Florida. Just wanted to get that in. We all hail from wonderful schools, and whichever one you choose is going to prepare you if you take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you. My two of my golden nuggets I wanted to share with you students today is, one is recognizing and taking advantage of the opportunities that come before you, because sometimes we don't realize it when the golden egg is sitting right in front of us. The fact that you are here with us this morning, you, whether your parents made you or you have the internal fortitude and desire to get up and get ready, or even just roll over and turn the phone on and participate in this event, shows that you have already separated yourself from the masses. The difference between successful people and unsuccessful people is that successful people do what unsuccessful people will not do. They let those opportunities pass. I'm gonna share a quick story because it's still kind of burning a little fire in me, that I called a relative of mine last night, and I know it was the 9th hour, if you will, and I said, hey, if I'm going to tell my students about this, and I told all of my students about this opportunity today. Some are on the line. Thank you, boys. And I teach only boys right now, but thank you for showing up and showing out. But even my relative, oh, he's not going to come to that, honey. He's not going to get up at 9:30 because he's going to be gaming all night. If that's your choice. But that's one thing, is recognizing them and taking advantage of them. That will set you apart. The second thing is making your mark. Have your questions. They may not be ready, but pay attention. Listen for something of interest today that might spark a little light in you, and bring forth your questions. No question is too small. No question is silly. We welcome that. That's how you learn. Okay. And you make your mark by asking questions and learning how to network and making positive and building relationships with people who can put you in different positions, whether that's the intention or not. Okay. But my engineering path has taken me in so many different directions. It has, from the very beginning, I'll just share that it's kind of a selfish thing, and was led fueled by money, which is not a good way to, don't always chase that carrot. We could talk about that another time, but my first internship opportunity in college, the career specialist said, hey, I can send you to this one particular location for an internship. And just because of your major of engineering, you're gonna make this amount of money. But if you were in any other major, you would make this lower amount of money. And I said, to do the same thing? And he said, yes. I said, wow, just because of my major, I would make a major difference in stipend or salary. And that was the first clue to the bigger picture and the puzzle, that taking advantage of that opportunity, the preparation and things that engineering was going to prepare me for, it prepares you to do any and everything you want to do. And the last thing I just want to share with you is popular to me in the circles I've been in, because I have gone through paths of engineering, automotive. I worked for General Motors for a little while, and I'm now in education, but I've also gone into sales, automotive sales. So I've built it, I've sold them, I've engineered them, I've checked the warranty on them and everything. But I've also gone into film and television, which most people are shocked about. And working, I do a little bit in it, dabble in it a little bit now. But one of my colleagues and one of the people I respect a lot is Will Packer. Don't know if you've ever heard of him, but if you've ever seen the movie Ride Along or Ride Along 2, Think Like a Man, and the list goes on. But we go way back to Chocolate City. That movie was made at FAMU. It happened to be on internship because I took advantage of an opportunity and I missed out on being able to have my Broadway acting debut. In my mind, that's what would have happened if I had stayed at school that summer. But I digress. Will Packer is an engineer, electrical engineer turned to producing, and is phenomenal in that vein. So I just want to impart on you that following a path in engineering will prepare you for any and everything you want to do. Make your mark, make yourself known, learn how to network politely, brush up on your internet and your cyber skills and etiquette and so forth, and learn how to present yourself well, and it will carry you far and take full opportunity of opportunities when they come to you. Thank you so much again for having me, and I'm sorry if I rambled a little bit.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Math 2.0. They cannot have enough math. Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. All right, we have Dr. Cynthia Warwick, the president of Stillman. Madam President, over to you. And then after you have your remarks, we're going to go right to the career day. Each of the children will be broken into one of 5 rooms, the elementary track, the middle school track, and then 3 high school collegiate tracks. And there'll be 4 career day panelists in each track. So Dr. Warwick, over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Bowman, for allowing me to speak to these wonderful youth this morning. My name is Cynthia Warwick. I am originally from San Antonio, Texas. And when I graduated from high school, I went through school with being like one of the only African Americans in my classes. Even though I was in public school, my school had more white students than Black students. And I was an honor student, and I was, thought I knew everything. Well, my dad wanted me to go to pharmacy school at the University of Houston, and they had just integrated their schools. And I told my dad, I don't want to do that because that would make me, the only again. I had already had that experience. I want to go where there are other Black folks. And that's why I chose Howard University, and why so many of us have gone to historically Black colleges, or HBCUs. And I want you all to know I'm a very proud graduate of the pharmacy school. So I'm a pharmacist at Howard University, which is the same institution of our Vice President-elect, Kamala Harris. So we're all very, very, very excited about what that means to all of the HBCU community. And one of the reasons why I want you to think about an HBCU like Stillman College, which was founded in 1876 in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, is that we're not competing. One of the things that you get at an HBCU is a lack of discrimination. You can go to one of those big schools and be a number. But at an HBCU, your faculty know who you are. They know your name. They know if you came to class, and they're going to call you on it. And if you got that D or F, you earned it. It wasn't because of the color of your skin or your hair. It wasn't because you had a big fro, which I had a big fro in those days. And it wasn't because you had dreadlocks or twists or however you want to wear your hair. You can be yourself at an HBCU, and all of these folk are representative of what you can accomplish at an HBCU, because that focus is on you, and it's on making sure that you get into top graduate programs, that you get into top careers, that they connect you to all of those opportunities that you get because you're at an HBCU. So So I am HBCU proud. All of my family members, we represent over 17 HBCUs. When I think about my grandparents, my aunts, uncles, and my children, and I hate to say it, but all of my children are rattlers. I just hate to say it, but they are. But my dad, my brother, and my nephew are all Prairie View alums. We've got alums from everywhere. And I've actually worked at 7 different HBCUs. I was the former president at South Carolina State, at Grambling. I was a dean of math, science, and technology at Elizabeth City State. I was on the pharmacy faculty at Texas Southern and Howard University. So I know HBCUs. I know we can do the best for you because we're focused on you and what we want excellence out of you. And what you need to know is you need to work hard. Because when I got to Howard, and like I said, I was an honor student and I thought I was smart, and I was not doing well in general chemistry. And I went to, the first test I got was a 50, and I was like, oh boy, I better stop playing cards as much every night. And that's what we did. Y'all have video games, but we were playing Bid Whist. And then, the second test was 40 something. I was like, I ain't never seen nothing like this before. So I better quit. So I quit all that gaming. And that's what you have to do. You have to be disciplined. If you're going to be in sciences, you have to be disciplined. You have to study, and you have to develop relationships with your instructors so they can make sure that your grades don't represent your knowledge. So I had to go visit my chemistry teacher, Dr. Kelso B. Morris. He was from Tyler, Texas. I remember this to this day. And he said, Miss Scott, I know you're working hard, and I will give you the benefit of the doubt, because there was no way I was going home from Howard University back home to San Antonio. I wanted to make sure I got through. And when I finished pharmacy school, I passed the board with one of the highest scores. I got past the board exam in Indiana, not in DC, not in Texas, but in Indiana. So I know I got the best education that I could at Howard at my HBCU. And I support all of you young people. Think about HBCUs first. It's the best place for you. Celebrate your culture, advance your education, and be excellent.
Dr. Cynthia Warwick, thank you, ma'am. That was absolutely wonderful. Boys and girls, men and women, we are now going to go to the career day. I want to also share with you that there are many of us who are graduates of HBCUs, but the United States Naval Academy is also here. It is America's institution, and I want you all to consider it. So now we're going to go to our breakout rooms, and we'll see you in the breakout rooms. We are back in the plenary session. We'll give ourselves about 30 seconds for everyone to join us. Wasn't that a fantastic career day? I think I went to several rooms. I heard engineers, I heard agriculture scientists, I heard teachers, I heard cybersecurity, I heard dentists. So that was just absolutely phenomenal. So the next voice that you'll hear will be our astronaut and main speaker. Major General Charles Bolden, again, is a decorated U.S. Marine Corps aviator. He flew A-6s in Vietnam. He has over 100 combat missions. He then went to become a test pilot, and then went to the astronaut program. One of his mentors was the late Ron McNair. His son is an aviator. He's a family man, a mentor to all of us, and he's the former director of NASA. So with no further ado, we will go to Major General Charles Bolden.
Thanks very much, and hello to all of you. I was so glad to have an opportunity to skip around to a few of the breakout sessions, and as I was telling the kids in the middle school group, that was the smart group. So glad I had a chance to drop in on all of you. I will join all the other speakers earlier today in saying how much we appreciate your taking the time to spend this time today getting an opportunity to hear about people who have done some of the things that you may want to do. I don't want to talk a lot because I want to try to get to the questions that you may have for me. But I thought I would start by just telling you how I ended up doing what I'm doing now. And for those of you who don't know, I am wearing a NASA bike shirt. I ride a bicycle for exercise now. I don't run anymore because of my knees, but I ride my bicycle and I try to ride every day. And this is my NASA bike shirt. I happen to be in Cape Canaveral, Florida right now. So I'm not at home. We live outside of Washington, D.C. in a place called Crystal City, Virginia, or Arlington, Virginia. But I came down for the scheduled SpaceX launch that was supposed to happen tonight, but now will probably happen tomorrow night. And it's a very special time for me because one of the crew members, the pilot on the crew, is Victor Glover, who looks like all of us. Victor, I think some of you who were on earlier may have seen the video about him with his family. But Victor and the other 3 members of his crew are down here in quarantine and over at the Kennedy Space Center, and they're all anxious to go fly tomorrow. But anyway, so that's what I'm doing here, and I'm really excited about it. I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina. Now, I'm not sure whether any of you on the line are from South Carolina at all. Hopefully there's somebody there. But when I grew up, the schools were segregated. They weren't the way they are today. So black kids went to one set of schools and white kids went to another set of schools. One of the things, though, that was, I guess, a misconception about it was that our education wasn't very good. You've heard several of the speakers earlier today talk about the quality education they got from historically black colleges and universities. And I would say the same thing. Although our schools were segregated, our teachers were really devoted and dedicated to us. And so I got a pretty good education growing up in South Carolina. There was one thing, though, that changed my life when I was 12 years old. So for some of the middle school kids, when I was in 7th grade, I saw a program on television called Men of Annapolis, and it was about life at the Naval Academy. Now, Matt has mentioned to you all several times about the Naval Academy, and I know we have at least 2 midshipmen on the line here, but I went to the same school they went to. My wife went to a historically black college. She went to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, as did my daughter. But my son and I we ventured off and we went to the Naval Academy, and both ended up coming into the Marine Corps and both ended up as aviators. But I saw this program called Men of Annapolis about life at the Naval Academy. I had no idea, no clue what the Navy did or what it was like. I just loved the way the campus looked. I loved the uniforms. They would wear these high collars and everything and all formal. And so I decided that's where I want to go to college. And that's what I started working on from the age of 12. I had to get you had to get an appointment from either your senator or from your congressional representative, and everybody was eligible for an appointment from the Vice President of the United States. So I wrote to all of them. But back then, my two U.S. senators and my congressional representative made it very clear to me that they were not going to appoint a black to the Naval Academy. So my hope became getting an appointment from then Vice President Lyndon Johnson. However, unfortunately for me, my senior year in high school, President John Kennedy was assassinated and Lyndon Johnson became the president. So I tell you all that to say, so on the day that President Kennedy was assassinated, it was a really, really dark day for a lot of reasons. For me, losing a president, but also because I knew that it probably meant I was not going to get to go to the Naval Academy because I wasn't eligible for a presidential appointment, and Vice President Johnson became the president. But I did something that my mom and dad encouraged me to do, and you've had several of the speakers today encourage you to do. I really wanted to go to the Naval Academy. I was passionate about it. And they said, if you want to go, write the president and tell him you want to go. And so I did that. I took a piece of paper and a pen and I wrote a letter to President Lyndon Johnson. And I said, Mr. President, you and I have been talking through letters for a number of years now. And I know I'm not eligible for an appointment to the Naval Academy from you, but I really, really, really want to go there. Can you help me? Never heard from him. But within a few weeks, a Navy recruiter showed up at my door and asked for me, said, hey, I understand you want to go to the Naval Academy. A few weeks later, the president sent a retired federal judge around the country looking for young Black men and Hispanic who were interested in going to the service academies. Women were not admitted at that time, so they were only looking for young men. And by virtue of doing all that, I ended up getting an appointment from Congressman William Dawson in Chicago, Illinois. And I went there. And when I left high school, there were two things that I knew, absolutely knew I would not do. I was definitely not going to fly airplanes because that was inherently dangerous. Got that, Matt? No way in the world I was going to fly airplanes. And Vice Admiral Davis, that's all he ever wanted to do. I had no desire to get anywhere close to an airplane. The second thing I was not going to do was I was not going to be a Marine because I thought Marines were crazy. So with those two things that I knew I was not going to do, I started my time at the Naval Academy. And my first year, my company officer or mentor or advisor happened to be a young Marine Corps major who was an infantry officer. And he impressed me unbelievably. He was like my dad. He was really tough, but unbelievably fair. And so 4 years later, when it was time to graduate, I said, you know, I can do anything I want to do. I can sail ships. I can probably go fly airplanes, but I don't want to do that. I want to be like him. His name was Major John Riley Love. And I said, I want to be like him. I want to be a Marine. So I chose the Marine Corps because of the impression that a person had made on me. Some of you are going to do the same thing in your lives. You're going to choose to be a teacher or a dentist or a doctor or a lawyer or an aviator because of somebody in your life that impressed you. Once I came into the Marine Corps, going through my first 6 months of training to learn how to be a rifle platoon commander, an infantry officer, I found I didn't like crawling around in the mud. And my wife did not like the idea of me being a Marine anyway, and she did not like the prospect of me going to Vietnam. So she kept harping on me why don't we go to Pensacola, Florida? And I said, I don't want to go to Pensacola. That's where they fly airplanes, and I don't want to fly airplanes. And she kept insisting. So I finally gave up and I said, okay, we'll go to Pensacola. And we went to Pensacola. And first time I got in an airplane and felt the wheels lift off, I mean, there was something in my chest, in my whole body that said, wow, I cannot believe this. This is really, really super. And so I fell in love with flying, and the rest is sort of history. I had no desire whatsoever to become an astronaut. I knew about the space program, but that did not impress me. And then another thing happened in my life. I decided I wanted to be a test pilot, and I managed to get to do that. And I was in a place called Patuxent River, Maryland. And the same time I was there, NASA had selected their first group of space shuttle astronauts. And among that group in 1978 were 3 African-American men, all 2 of them were military, 2 were Air Force, and the late, great Dr. Ron McNair. And Ron and I did not know each other, but he and I had grown up about 42 miles from each other in South Carolina. He grew up in Lake City, South Carolina, and I grew up in Columbia. But unlike me, Ron had always, all his life, wanted to be an astronaut. And so that's what he focused on. He went to North Carolina A&T, got his undergraduate degree, and then accepted a slot at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he earned his doctorate, his PhD in laser physics, and became one of the world's foremost laser physicists. And when NASA advertised for people to come into the space program, he applied and he was accepted in the first group. So he came back from Houston up to Pax River, where I was, along with some of the Navy and Marine Corps pilots who had trained there. And I saw this Black guy get out of the back of this sleek looking NASA T-38. And I was mesmerized. I said, boy, I didn't know they had, I didn't realize that they flew those kinds of airplanes, but I didn't realize that there was a guy who looked like me there. I hadn't really paid much attention to it. And so Ron and I talked the whole weekend, and I was really impressed, but not impressed enough that I was going to apply for the space program. But before he went back to Houston, he said, hey, are you going to apply for the program? I said, not on your life. And he looked at me real strange. He said, why not? I said, they'd never pick me, Ron. And he said, that is the dumbest thing I ever heard. I mean, that's dumb. How do you know they won't pick you if you don't ask? And more than anything else, I was embarrassed because my mom and dad had been my teachers growing up, and they had always told me I could do anything I wanted to do if I was willing to work and apply myself. And I had forgotten that. So when Ron went back to Houston, I got my paper and pencil out and I applied for the astronaut program, got nominated by the Marine Corps to NASA, had an opportunity to go interview in Houston, Texas. And lo and behold, when they selected the second group of space shuttle astronauts, I was in that group. So that's how I happened to do that. Somebody really encouraged me, mentored me, pushed me, embarrassed me, and made me decide to do it. So that's how I got to be an astronaut. I can tell you some other stuff, but let me do a real quick thing here. I'm going to try to share my screen with you if I can, and show you so you can get to questions. But okay, you don't want to see that. That's the title. I don't know if any of you recognize the folk in that picture. Those are the 4 crew members with their SpaceX Crew Dragon right behind them. They took this picture right down here at the Kennedy Space Center not many days ago. Anybody notice what they're wearing? Come off your mic and yell it. What are they wearing?
Mask.
Why are they wearing masks?
Mask.
Themselves. Mask.
To protect themselves and to protect other people. This 4-person crew is getting ready to go to space, and they're going to be living for the next 6 months on the International Space Station. So we cannot afford for them to get sick and take coronavirus to the International Space Station. So that's why they're wearing the mask. I see somebody just kind of, I hope they were trying to point to Victor, but I don't know whether you can see my arrow, but the guy on the right is Victor Glover. And let me go back one, but I think we're being hacked. But anyway, Victor is the person on the right. He is only the 2nd African-American pilot to fly a spacecraft in 26 years. So I flew last 26 years ago, and Victor will fly tomorrow night. And that's unacceptable. So he and I are working on solving that problem, on making sure that doesn't happen. This is the International Space Station. People live and work on this now for 6 months at a time. And every once in a while, we have somebody that lives there for a year. We had one American, Scott Kelly, who lived on the International Space Station about 2 years ago. He was there with his Russian counterpart, and they both were there for 1 whole year. So we've now been living and working on the International Space Station for 20 plus years. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary a few weeks ago. So that's the International Space Station. I'm going to show you this, and I'm just going to be quiet and let you look. But this is kind of stuff they do. This is Mike Hopkins. He's Victor Glover's commander on this flight company. That's Scott Kelly. He lived on the space station for a year. That's the first time we ate lettuce that we actually grew on the International Space Station. So they now grow a lot of their own food: beans, lettuce, tomatoes, little cherry tomatoes.
That's the only reason I really don't become, because you always tell me.
This is our planet. And a couple of things for some of you who think you want to live on Mars. I'm a big fan of Mars, and I want to go to Mars one of these days. I do not want to stay there. This is the only planet in our solar system that we know can sustain life today. We study places like Mars and Venus, and we're now beginning with telescopes like the Hubble Space Telescope and the soon to be flown James Webb Space Telescope. We're trying to learn about Earth-like planets in other galaxies and other solar systems. So one of these days, we may find another planet that's like our own planet Earth, but this is our planet Earth, and we have to take care of it, because right now, it's the only place that we know of that can sustain life the way that we know it. Anybody know what that circle is, that ball going around Earth? Anybody want to
The
guess? That's our moon. And because we're looking at it through a camera that's 1.5 million kilometers away from Earth.
I voted for you already.
You're actually seeing what we call the backside of the moon. The moon goes around Earth. It rotates on its own axis, just like Earth does, but it rotates on its axis once every 28 days. So as it goes around Earth, we only see one side of it. So the lit side of the moon that we see all the time is the only side we see, because it's rotating slow enough that we never get to see the backside. So you're getting to see the backside of the moon here. So I think that's my my little slideshow. I'll get back to you. Couple of things. I hate giving advice, so don't take this as advice. Take this as what I learned myself. Okay, 3 things my mom and dad taught me. Like I said, my mother was my middle school librarian. I was her library assistant. My father was my high school football coach, and like I said, he was really tough. I was a quarterback, not very good. So I was the 2nd string quarterback. So I played for my dad in high school, and he had a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog. So for some of you who may be a little bit smaller than the average bear, don't worry about it. I was just like you. I was 4 feet 11, and I weighed 84 pounds when I went to 9th grade in high school. I'm not much bigger than that nowadays, but anyway, so study really hard. I think several of the speakers have said that today. Study, study, study. People ask me a lot, what do I need to study? Of course you need math and science, but you also need foreign languages, because every time you learn a language, you learn a little bit about the culture of the people who speak that language. You need to understand history, particularly for us, for people of color. We have to understand our history, otherwise we're destined to repeat it, and we cannot do that. We're in a critical time of our lives right now, all of us, as we suffer through this COVID pandemic, but also a period of awakening on the part of a lot of people about social and racial injustice. And we have to know our history so that we can be champions to make sure that the world of the future is not the same as the world of today. So study really hard. Second thing is work really hard. And when I talk about working, what I really mean is practice. Just practice, practice, practice. For those of you who are athletes or dancers or singers, you wouldn't think about going into a performance without practicing and practicing and practicing. Your coaches tell you all the time, you got to practice, practice, practice. You got to work hard if you want to be a champion. Why would you think you can go in the classroom and be good without working hard at it? So when you go to the classroom, work really hard at the subject matter so that you try to become the best person in the world in that particular subject. You may not be, but at least by trying, you'll be better off than most people. And the final thing is never, ever, ever be afraid of failure. Failure is a part of life. Many of us will tell you, many of us adults will tell you, some of our greatest lessons were learned through our failure. And we came out on the other side. When we got up off the ground and figured out what went wrong, we came out and we were much stronger and much better for it. So study really hard, work really hard. Don't ever be afraid of failure. You can do anything you want to do. You just have to set your mind to it. I'll close with a saying that I love. It's from a young man who died of AIDS in a place called KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, a long time ago, back in 2001. And his name was Nkosi Johnson. And he was a champion for AIDS and also for equal rights of Black people on the African continent. But before he died, he met with an American writer who noticed that he was always smiling and always upbeat and never cried out in pain, never said anything about himself, was always giving people direction, always trying to help other people. And although he died at the age of 12, when this writer, Jim Wooten, talked to him, he said, Nkosi, I don't understand. He said, you're never sad. You never ask for anything. What makes you tick? Why do you do what you do? And Nkosi looked up at him and he smiled and he said, you do all you can with what you have in the time that you have in the place that you are. Do all you can with what you have in the time that you have in the place that you are. That's all anybody can ask of you. So thanks so very much for allowing me to be with you all. We've got some time, and I think I'm going to turn it back over to Matt, and we're going to try to answer some questions for you all, I think. Is that right, Matt?
Yes, sir. We're going to go to question and answer. And when you ask your question, please state your name and your age so that we get your first name only and your age so that we know who you are. And then, sir, as you answer the questions, we have Dr. Warwick on the line and Vice Admiral Brewer and Vice Admiral Davis, sir. So we have a cadre to respond to the questions. But children, it's our honor to have Astronaut Bolden. So we're open up for questions.
Don't forget, he said you can ask it to any of the four of us. They don't all go to me. I'm going to put Admiral Brewer to work if nobody asks him a question.
Yes, sir.
Sir Dylan Watford sent a chat asking a question. Do the astronauts have to take vitamins and use a sunlight lamp in space?
Dylan, we don't use a sunlight lamp. In fact, one of the things that we do is we actually put filters on the windows so that they don't get too much sunlight into the spacecraft. One of the things, what is it? Who knows what protects us from the radiation of the sun? Anybody know? What about
the ozone layer?
Yeah, it's our atmosphere. We live inside a bubble, and our atmosphere shields us from the harsh radiation of the sun. When we're in space, we're outside that bubble. We're outside the magnetosphere and outside our atmosphere, and so the sun can be pretty harsh on astronauts. They actually, as you're going around, you go around Earth once every 90 minutes. And so you're in darkness for 45 minutes, in light for 45 minutes. You see the sun rise and set 16 times every normal Earth day. So your daylight is 45 minutes, nighttime's 45 minutes, and just alternates like that. An astronaut who's outside doing a spacewalk in the sunlight, the suit feels up to 250 degrees Fahrenheit of heat on the outside. On the outside in the dark, it's minus 250 degrees. So an astronaut inside the spacesuit goes through a 500-degree temperature swing. But your question about vitamins, we actually, we do three things to protect astronauts and to try to keep their bodies healthy, because bone loss is something we really worry about with gravity being overcome while we're in space. So we exercise. We have a lot of exercise devices that are not unlike what you would see in a gym down here. Gravity is overcome, but we use bungees and things to present the resistance so that it feels like we're down here on Earth. We have a very rigid diet, so we work out our diets with the dietitians before we even leave Earth. Some of you may remember the people with the chef hats on at the end. Those are some of our dietitians and cooks that prepare the foods for us. And then we always have pharmaceuticals, medication if we need it for vitamin supplement or the other thing. The doctors look at the astronauts' health every single day. They record everything we eat and drink. And so they can send messages up every day to the astronauts saying, okay, Victor, you need a little bit more greens. So when you eat today, go and get some extra collard greens out or some extra peas or something, because you need a little bit more vitamin D or whatever comes from greens. I don't know. So hopefully that answers your question.
Sir, Ethan wants to know, how did you prepare to go to space? He's 9 years old.
Yeah, Ethan, every crew member does, it takes about 2 years to get ready for a specific mission. The first year when you're assigned to be a crew member, and this comes on the heels of several years of just generic preparation. Everybody, if you're not a military pilot, everybody gets into the T-38 and learns how to fly because we use the T-38 as a training aircraft to help us get accustomed to being in unusual attitudes and reacting quickly to unusual experiences and the like. And then we take courses like aerodynamics, meteorology, oceanography, geography. So again, it brings everybody up to speed so that we all know about the same amount. And nowadays, because we fly sometimes on Russian spacecraft, every crew member, every American astronaut has to learn to speak Russian. I didn't have to do that when I was there. So you do the generic training first, and then once you're assigned to a crew, you and your crew members train in a simulator. You go through over and over and over, learning all about the spacecraft that you're going to fly. And then the last part of that, you get together with the flight controllers and the flight directors on the ground around the world. And you go through what we call integrated simulations, where they throw in faults that we don't even see in the spacecraft. We don't know things are going wrong, but the people on the ground, because they have much finer instruments and gauges, they can see a leak, for example, days before we'll see it on board the spacecraft. So it's as much for training the ground crew to be able to take care of us as it is us. So it's about a 2-year period of time to get trained. You go through survival training, like I said, flight training, and then the training for the vehicle. Nowadays on the International Space Station, we don't get to do a lot of very specific training on the experiments we do, because a crew member may do as many as 200 experiments in the 6 months that they're on the International Space Station. So what we do is we teach crew members how to do basic laboratory kinds of work, and then we give them preparation. Either the principal investigator, the doctor doing the test, will send them some reading material that they can study up on it first. And nowadays, the doctors or the principal investigators can actually get on a mic, on a headset, and talk to the crew as they do the experiments. We couldn't do that when I was flying in the space shuttle.
Sir, Maria Figgins wants to know how many times you've been to space.
Maria, I flew 4 times, and remember now, I'm a space shuttle astronaut. I'm a wimp compared to what Victor and people do nowadays. A normal period of time on the International Space Station today is 6 months. So that's a normal mission. Very few people go for less than that, unless it's a space tourist or something like that. But a normal NASA crew member will go for at least 6 months, and sometimes as much as a year. My longest mission in the space shuttle was 9 days. So I had, in 4 flights, I had the equivalent of about a month in space. People think it's a lot, but my 680 hours are dwarfed by what people do today who go to the International Space Station.
Sir, Maria Bowman, who's 15 years old, wants to know if you get motion sickness in space.
Maria, some people do. I'm pretty lucky in that I didn't have any problem at all. We kind of call it space adaptation syndrome. It's not exactly like, it's not at all like the motion sickness that you feel, seasickness. Doctors don't completely understand it, but we attribute a lot of it to being just what we call the conflict theory, where your eyes tell you something's going on and your body doesn't tell the brain the same thing. With gravity having been overcome, you have no idea of up and down. So you could be upside down. It's 12 o'clock. Looking out the window or looking at something in the cabin, and it looks like everything's upright, and your brain goes, wait a minute, I'm confused here. Or you look out the window expecting Earth to be down there, and Earth may be up there, and the brain just gets confused. And if it's not able to resolve that, the brain sends a signal to your stomach sometimes, and all of a sudden you might feel mild stomach awareness, or some people actually get sick. Almost nobody suffers from space adaptation syndrome longer than a couple of days. So it takes about 2 days for people to adapt, and then you're pretty good. Very few people experience a similar sensation when they come back to Earth. They're no longer in this microgravity environment, and they've got gravity pulling down on them all the time, and their body just takes it has a difficult time adjusting. And some of them get sick to the point that they have to have medication. But again, that happens very, very, very rarely.
Sir, Ronan, who is in the 7th grade, wants to know who designs the space suits.
You know, Ronan, it depends on who you're flying with. The space suits that if you watch the launch tomorrow, and if you start watching a few hours earlier, you'll see the crew come out of the crew quarters down here at the Kennedy Space Center, where they got dressed in their suits. They'll be wearing SpaceX spacesuits. So there are suits that were designed by SpaceX suit designers in collaboration with colleges and universities around the country. When you see people fly in a Russian spacecraft, they're flying Russian spacesuits. So the spacesuits today, because we now have commercially provided spacecraft, the spacesuits are generally designed by the manufacturer of the spacecraft. So SpaceX has their own suits, Blue Origin has their own suits, NASA has its own suits. Today, though, for a spacewalk, we only have two spacesuits. We have or what we call extravehicular mobility units. One is a Russian model and one's an American model. But we're working really hard, both with academia, with colleges and universities, and with industry to try to come up with a much more streamlined suit, one that's much more efficient and effective and doesn't weigh quite as much as the suit today. Today's spacesuit weighs about 300 pounds down here on the ground. The good thing is when you're in space, it doesn't weigh anything because you're weightless. So, you know, you can get around, but it's still a 300-pound suit. It's really bulky and not easy to work in.
Sir, Andrea, who's 16 years old, says that since there are a lot of developments being made in space exploration and space travel, what do you project will be the best track to becoming an astronaut in the near future?
The absolutely greatest thing about today, was that Angela?
Andrea?
Andrea. The best thing about today, and all of you on this session today should know, any one of you that wants to be an astronaut can become one, because there are any number of avenues for you to get there. You may not want to go in the military. And in fact, most of NASA's astronauts today, more than half of NASA's astronauts today are not military people. They're not the old kind of astronaut that used to be a test pilot. We have doctors, we have engineers, some pilots, some flight officers, or what we in the Navy and Marine Corps call naval flight officers. But a lot of the astronauts today, at least from the United States, are scientists and medical doctors and researchers. If you want to fly with one of the commercial providers like a SpaceX or Virgin Galactic or even Blue Origin soon, you go through their selection process and you don't ever come in contact with NASA. So they're Virgin Galactic, which does what we call suborbital space flight. They have a spacecraft, a space rocket that drops from its carrier aircraft and then lights its rocket engine and flies up, zooms up into space, turns itself over, and then comes back down. So they spend about 20 minutes in space and come back down, just like Alan Shepard did, the first American to go to space. So that's what we call suborbital space flight. You don't actually go around Earth, but you go into space and right back down. For orbital space flight, there's a little bit more involved in the training and everything else, but you can still engage in orbital space flight going through one of the private companies. There are now private schools to go through for test piloting. When I became a test pilot, there were only two places in the United States you could go. You could go to Edwards Air Force Base to the Air Force Aerospace Test Pilot School, or you could go to Patuxent River, Maryland to the Navy's Test Pilot School, or you could go to France or England. So there were only 4 test pilot schools in the world. Today, there's a test pilot school in Mojave that's civilian run. There's a test pilot school in New Mexico. So there's all kinds of ways that you can go to space without actually having to go through NASA or the military. So hopefully you'll take up one of those. I want to see you on Mars with me.
Sir, Maria has another question for you. She wants to know, what did you have to do with the Hubble Space Telescope?
Oh, Maria, it's you know, I don't have a favorite mission, but that's one of those that stands way up there, because that was my second flight to space on the Space Shuttle Discovery. I was the pilot or co-pilot when we took the Hubble Space Telescope to space and lifted it out of the payload bay of the shuttle with the remote manipulator system, the mechanical arm, the robot arm. We lifted it out and got it all configured and then released it and put it into space in 1990. So Hubble has been in space now for 30 years because we've done 5 Hubble servicing missions, which means we've sent astronauts up and they've changed out components. We've actually changed out almost everything, every part of Hubble that was on the original Hubble Space Telescope. It's really an observatory. It's multiple telescopes, but it has 6 brand new instruments in it. The solar arrays, this is the 3rd generation of solar arrays on it. It's got all new batteries. So it's a pretty new observatory, but I was on the crew that put the original Hubble Space Telescope into orbit. And I'm very proud of that.
Sir, Ronan is very interested in knowing, do you work with astrophysics as well as math and engineering?
Ronan, I got to get some of the engineers on here to answer. I work around astrophysicists. They're too smart. Those are, remember I told you, nowadays more than half of the astronauts, the NASA astronauts, are no longer pilots. Pilots like me, we're good at what we do. We know how to fly airplanes and we're smart, but the engineers and the scientists and all the PhDs that we worked around, they're really smart. And so I flew with a couple of astrophysicists several times, and they just kind of dwarf you. One of the reasons when I went down for my interview in Houston in the winter of 1980, I came back and I told my wife, there is no way in the world I'm going to get selected to be an astronaut. There are too many smart people in the world. And I had interviewed, we interviewed 200 people. NASA goes through thousands of applications, and they pick 200 people to bring to Houston to interview over a 2-week period of time. Now, a lot of psychological evaluation, medical tests, and everything else. I went down with 20 and 19 others in my group. And I mean, guys and girls with degrees from up here around their neck all the way down to their fingertips. And I didn't think I would compete, but I did pretty well. And I'll tell you why. It always, and I'm trying to remember, I was in one of your sessions and one of the speakers said, always carry a pen and paper and always ask lots of questions. I will add, never, ever, ever be embarrassed or ashamed to speak up. When I went through my astronaut session, my week of evaluation, the highlight of the week was a 2-hour interview. You stood at one end of a big green table, and there were people all around the table who represented the engineering community, the astronaut office, human capital, personnel people and everything. And you talk to them for 2 hours, and they ask you all kinds of off the wall questions. And having sat on a selection board now, I can tell you, we didn't have any doubts about people's technical qualifications. What we wanted to find out in the interview was, how do they present themselves? Are they poised? Are they confident? Will they represent NASA well? Matt will probably tell you, even in the Navy, Marine Corps, when you get ready to go into a school as an instructor, one of the things that you get groomed on is, they call it charm school, and they want you to be able to talk to your students and communicate effectively with them. So they were really looking to see how I communicated and how I responded when they asked what I would think maybe were stupid questions or trivial questions. But I think I did pretty well. So I ended up being selected. And I tell people all the time, my 8 years working for President Obama as the NASA administrator, I was essentially what you call the voice and the face of NASA. So people saw me and heard me all the time talking about the space agency and all the work we did. And I would always tell the people who work with me in NASA, don't ever let me embarrass you. Don't let me go out and say something that's not right. When you hear me go through my preparation, do not be embarrassed about raising your hand and say, sir, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. That is not correct. I don't know who told you that, because I am going to go out and represent all of you. And you should all be the same way when you're in positions of authority. Tell people, don't let you go out and look stupid. If you will almost never be the smartest person in the room. That's not what's important. What's important is for you to be smart enough to know that you need to have really smart people around you to help you run your organization. I'm going to ask Admiral Brewer here. Admiral Brewer, on your ship, your ships, what would you have been if you thought you were the smartest person on the ship? How do you think your ships would have done?
Not very well. Because, one of the things that I always said is that you're only as good as the people who work for you. And my philosophy is very simple. There are two types of leaders. There are ladder builders and there are ladder climbers. Ladder climbers are people who really focus just basically on themselves and their own personal accomplishments. Ladder builders are people who understand very clearly that your success is based on the success that you generate in others. Ladder climbers also have a tendency to fail. And when they fail, because they've walked over the backs of a lot of people, they find themselves nobody there to support them. For young people, what that really means is that if you're on a football team, a basketball team, or any kind of a team, you want to be a team player. You just don't want to be somebody out there trying to, set all the records, etc. Your success is really embedded in your team.
You know, Admiral Davis, you might add, not only were you highly successful in the Navy, but you came out and started your own company, and people come to you now seeking wisdom. I can imagine, what you did to put this session together today, because I happen to know you went out and you got really smart young people, like Matt Bowman and others. So you got anything you want to add to it?
Well, Tyrone and I both would answer that question the same. We went out and got Matt Bowman and Quan Hurst. And we know what influence they can have with the people like you when you work with them, because they have that enthusiasm for their work, and they know how to put together a team. Yeah. As Admiral Brewer mentioned, when the aboard ship on the aircraft carrier had 5,000 people, I needed all 5,000, and every one of them is part of that team. You needed all of them, and Matt and Quan are really good at putting together a team, and we really want to thank you for being part of that team today. You've influenced me. I want to be an astronaut now.
I have one more question. Admiral Davis, didn't you command the Ranger?
I did.
For the kids, they may or may not appreciate this, but I'm going to tell this story. The USS Ranger is a huge, it may be razor blades now, I don't know.
It is.
Aircraft carriers are huge ships. And like Admiral Davis said, they have a 5,000 person crew on it. When Admiral Davis got there, the Ranger was called the Danger Ranger. And it had a reputation for being a horrible ship, absolutely horrible. They couldn't do anything right. To show you what happens when he left, having served as the commander of that ship, it was one of the best carriers in the Navy, and it was all because of the type of leadership that he exerted, the fact that he trusted his crew and he let them know that he depended on them making him successful, and they would work together. And that I always, everybody in the Navy knows the story of the Danger Ranger and what Admiral Walt Davis did to turn that ship around. It doesn't happen very often in the Navy that you take a bad ship and make it good, and he did it. So I just wanted to tell that story about him.
I enjoyed every minute of it.
Well, to all of the flag officers, there are nearly 30 midshipmen on this call today.
Oh my goodness.
And the question is, how would they go about finding flag mentors, and how would the K through 12 students find mentors in this age of COVID-19, when many of them don't have the advantage of having in-person events?
Tyrone, you want to answer that question?
Absolutely, sir. Now, first of all,
Tyrone is the man.
Let me say this, that this virtual community that we're doing today, these are really great opportunities to do so. What I would encourage all of the young people, where it is age appropriate, please join some of the different groups that are online, the educational groups that exist out there. And again, I think that connecting with professional organizations. We have a sustained mentoring program with BEYA Stars and Stripes that's run by Vice Admiral Andy Wins, as well as Jesse McCrary. That is one great place to tie in and to continue these kind of opportunities. Lastly, we have a book up called Becoming an Engineer. If you check your feed, check into that and follow blackengineer.com. We will have more and more resources available for young people to stay engaged during this pandemic. But the internet is a great way for us to stay together until we're able to see and meet each other in person again.
And the only thing I'll add for the midshipmen, since you asked the question, even in COVID, we're going to have another astronaut convocation coming up next year. We usually bring astronauts down to the campus and have an evening where they do a panel and talk about what it's like. We are going to be there. We may be virtual, but we're going to be there. So I would say take advantage of that. Make sure you participate. Make sure you ask lots of questions. And almost all of us respond to email. So, you know, we'll give you our email addresses. I'm certain that if you, because we didn't do it this time, if you send it to BEYA, they can put you in touch with me, I know, and I'll be more than happy to respond to things that people say, people ask.
Okay, back to you specifically, General Bolden. Gabby says that she noticed that you embraced change so much, even when you said there were things you didn't want to do in life, but you ended up doing them. So how did you embrace change so openly? And what was your mentality in moving into those new sectors in your career, even though you knew so little about them?
I will go back and I'll give the credit to my mom and dad. I tell people all the time, you know, I'm a Marine. I'm still a Marine. And we have something we call our core values. The Navy and the Marine Corps have the core values of honor, courage, and commitment. And we try to live that. And I tell people all the time when they talk about an ethics course or stuff like that, I argue with the lawyers all the time. I said, look, I got the best ethics course there was at my dinner table with my mom and dad. They taught me right and wrong. And they also, because we were living in the segregated South, my mom and dad said, there will be a day that we can make things different and we have to be prepared. And so they taught me to always be responsive to any opportunity that came my way. They said, you know, you may not know anything at all, but you probably know more than most people who are in there claiming to know everything. So do not be afraid to step up and offer whatever you can to help. And I would say to all of you, like I said, don't ever be afraid of failure. Usually, you know, we're afraid because we're a different color or because we're a different sex or because we're too short or we're too heavy or something else. We're afraid sometimes because we don't think we know enough. You know enough. You do know enough. And if you go and take advantage of all the assets that are available to you, whether it's online or in a library or something else, you can make yourself, you know, the best person in that particular field. So you should always strive to become the best person in the field, but never be embarrassed or never be timid about stepping up and speaking out.
Sir, Maria Bowman wants to know, what did you hear in space? And Ethan wants to know, is the Earth as beautiful from space as you expected?
Earth is much more beautiful, Ethan. I was overwhelmed. I literally cried. And I'm a wimpy guy anyway. Admiral Davis and Admiral Brewer will tell you, I break down and cry all the time. I'm just emotional. But I literally, I mean, tears rolled down my cheek. My very first space shuttle mission, I had spent a lot of time learning about the continent of Africa because I wanted to be able to look down and see the, you know, some of the countries from which my ancestors may have come. And I'm not sure why I thought I would see all these lines on the map. I mean, down there on the ground, but we, about 15 minutes into flight, we had left the Kennedy Space Center and I looked out in front of us and there was this, what looked like a big island. I mean, a big island. And it didn't take me very long to realize that that was the continent of Africa. That was my home continent. And there were no lines. I couldn't tell one country from another one. They all just kind of blended. And it, you know, it occurred to me that what my mom and dad had taught me about all of us being the same, about people all being the same, it just kind of hit me that this was one planet, one ocean, one world in which we all either survived together or we perished together. And I literally cried. It just moved me that way. We take some incredible pictures with the cameras we have. I have not seen any camera yet that can give you the pictures that God's cameras give to the human eye. So it is absolutely spectacular. So I got carried away on that one and I forgot the first question. I got to the second question first.
Yes, sir, you did. The first question was, what did you hear?
You know, believe it or not, you can't hear anything in space. And I'm being technical here. you would not find yourself outside a spacecraft without a suit on. So you always hear something because you're in a spacesuit. But if you were able to get out without a spacesuit on, because it's a vacuum. So it's got little molecules of air, but they're like blocks away and stuff like that. So there is no way for sound to make its way through space. So you don't hear anything. Inside the spacecraft, though, you hear crinkling and cracking and popping and all kinds of stuff all the time, because the spacecraft is constantly expanding and contracting. Remember, I told you for 45 minutes, it's 250 degrees on the outside. And for the next 45 minutes, it's minus 250 degrees. So the spacecraft, the structure itself, expands and contracts and expands and contracts every time it goes through that 500-degree temperature swing. And sometimes it's like being in I never served in a submarine, but I've heard people who served in submarines talk about hearing the hull pop as they descended, and the pressurization in the submarine equalized and stuff. But it's funny sounds inside the spacecraft.
Sir, I think you came close to answering this question. Did you ever miss home? Matthew Bowman wants to know.
Matthew, every single time I flew to space, and I haven't talked to everybody, but I talked to a lot of people. You're so busy that you don't have time to miss home until you get close to time to come home. And I think I remember this from deployments. You were really busy at sea, and then all of a sudden you're about a week or two away from getting home, and man, you just can't wait to get home. And it was like that every single flight I did. My last couple of days, I was really anxious to get home because I wanted to see my family and my kids. But up until those last few days, when there was the certainty of going home, I was just too busy working to miss being home. And nowadays, the astronauts, actually, everybody has their own little space on board. It's a cubicle, and they have access to FaceTime, email, they can call on the phone, they can do all kinds of stuff. So they actually can be in touch with their families, just like you and I do. The speed is not it's not high speed internet, but they have internet and everything.
Sir, there's many more questions, but I'm getting the hook. And so I think we are moving on to the next speaker.
Yes, ma'am. General Richardson, ma'am, thank you. Major General Bolden, sir, that was phenomenal. That was absolutely phenomenal to hear from an astronaut, to hear your message. It was so powerful and well received by everyone.
Excuse me, Mr. Bowman.
Sir, we're going to go to Dr. Cynthia Warwick, president of Stillman College.
We give him a big hand before he
to close this out.
Mr. Bowman.
Yes.
What college degree do you have?
Oh, what college degree I graduated from the Naval Academy with a Bachelor of Science in electrical science. And then I went back to grad school at the University of Southern California and got a master's in systems management.
That is awesome. Thank you, young man. All right, Dr. Warwick and Vice Brewer.
Well, it's been a great day, and I thank you again for allowing me to participate. As the president of Stillman College, I was very impressed with the questions that the young people speakers, and I think that says a lot about your interests and your future. I think your futures are all very bright. I would like to encourage all of you today to think about planning to attend a service academy or a university or college that has ROTC. I think it's so important today because, and especially parents on the call, the military, even if you don't want
Hello?
they have every job today in corporate America, in healthcare, and research. It's all in our military services. And the cost of higher education today is so expensive that if you go to a service academy or through ROTC, you can reduce that cost of your education significantly. You know, of course, in service academies, you don't pay for your tuition, and I can't tell you enough, to come out of college with a degree with no debt is really what you ought to be thriving for, because just like many of the last question was asked, what's your degrees? Well, I have an undergraduate degree in pharmacy. I have a master's degree. I have a certificate from UCLA. I have a PhD. And the only one of those degrees that I did not have debt or have to pay for myself was my doctorate. And so you just don't understand the value of the service academies and ROTC in terms of funding your education, because I know everyone on this call today is going to college. But let's be smart about how you fund that education, and and these opportunities that you have for your bright future. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Warwick. And now Vice Admiral Brewer for our close, our thanking guests and panelists. Over to you, sir.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank my good friend, General Bolden, for that phenomenal presentation. He is a hero to all of us. We watched him grow. It's not bad that he's from the mighty South Carolina, where my wife, where I married a woman from Winsboro, South Carolina, right outside of his hometown of Columbia. So I know that culture very well, and they are all successful. My wife also is a doctor, has her doctorate degree as well. So it must be something in that water down there in South Carolina. Young people, I just want to say this, that what you heard today is wisdom. And don't ever forget that. You know, there's knowledge, there's a lot of things, but then the one thing that separates people, successful people, from people who are not successful is wisdom. And what does wisdom mean? Wisdom means not only do you have knowledge, but you got common sense. And don't ever forget that, common sense. I know a lot of smart guys who, frankly speaking, could quote chapter and verse when it came to formulas, etc., but couldn't think their way out of a paper bag when it came to common sense. And that is what makes great leaders. Wisdom, common sense, being able to relate to other human beings, as I talked about ladder builder and ladder climber. Now, I want to leave y'all with one question, and then I'm going to leave you with one quote. Okay. One question is, what is the world's most powerful computer? I want to see it in chat. What is the world's most powerful computer? All right. The brain, the human brain, is the world's most powerful computer.
Anyway.
Somebody said smartphones, not quite. But anyway, so the bottom line is use your brain. If you use your brain and you maximize the capacity in your brain, then you will be successful. Now, your brain needs food in order to perform. And so I'm going to leave you with this one quote. If I read, I will succeed. I want you all to say that to yourselves. If I read, I will succeed. Because when you read, you are feeding your brain. And your brain will be able to reach out and grab information and knowledge and relate to experiences simply because you are reading. And like you've already heard, you do not have to read just textbooks. You should read books, period. And you will also begin to understand who is successful, who's not successful. You will get perfect examples of people who you should emulate and people who you should avoid. And you will also be able to relate those situations to current leadership. But more importantly, as you grow, as you finish high school, as you finish college, you will need the most successful students when I was in college were the students who read. So remember that. If I read, I will succeed. Good luck to you.
Thank you very much, Admiral Brewer. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. A great panel. Don't forget your post-event survey. Then we like everyone to come turn your computers on, get picture ready. We're going to take one photo. Juan, Ray, in 30 seconds, let's go ahead and take this photo and tell us, Ray.
Can I say just one thing while we taking that photo?
Yes, sir.
The major goal of this today, you'll find some imperfections here, but the major goal that we had was to make ourselves accessible to the students. So we'd really like if you have further questions, or you need a mentor, or you need help, as you know, John Bolden really, all of his examples will show you what you can get from us. So don't hesitate to do that. You've got our email addresses, call on us.